This video is sponsored by me. No one else is taking up the slot, so I'm doing it now. For the month of September, I'm gonna be streaming, like a lot. I've been away all of August and I've got some games to complete, namely Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and Dragon Quest XI when it comes out on the Switch. I'll be marathoning through both JRPGs for most of the month, so check out the page to see our schedule and join me as I reinvent my streaming format. This time with more couch, more weirdness, and my girlfriend will be joining me on some streams, so come say hi. Twitch.tv/DazVideos. September 12th, new Smash character reveal, female. She's not a demanded character and will disappoint and confuse a lot of people. Well, I know the whole fanbase is catching on fire with the idea of an Overwatch representative in the form of Tracer, but I'm still leaning towards my underdog character prediction of Chell from the Portal series. She's undemanded, confusing as a choice, severed away from Nintendo inside a game company that doesn't like games anymore, and yet she has some interesting mechanics to play around with in the Smash battlefield. Is it what people want? Does it mean Valve is coming back on its feet? And why pick her over the modern day Overwatch replacement? A perfectly confusing underdog choice if you ask me. But all this Smash Ultimate DLC speak has got me thinking. While the biggest element of all of these DLC packs are of course the new playable fighters introduced each time, oftentimes other big changes also take place into the game that go a little bit under the radar compared to the giant reveals. Just simple things like new game modes like the Amiibo Battle Arenas or the online tourney introductions. And while Smash Ultimate is very much doing a good job in keeping on everybody's minds with its methods of marketing by how it's, reaching across many months with its slow reveals that evidently cause immense amounts of hype that any other game company could only really dream of, one way or another, there's gonna be a stopping point to all of this hype madness. With only 2 more DLC characters to be revealed and no word of a whole nother challenger pack, which I guess is possible, but I have to ask, what's going to be waiting for us at the end of this tunnel? Surely Nintendo wouldn't just let Smash end off with a subtle fade. Surely for that final chunk of DLC, we're going to get hit with something big to really go out with a bang. I mean, just look at pretty much every big Nintendo event. Always hitting us hard with a one more thing. Be it Ridley in Smash, a new Animal Crossing, or a sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And really, if we were to be especially critical and nitpicky, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate really needs to have that extra ultimate twang if it wants to keep that title. It needs to be the absolute best in the series. And it's done a good job so far. I mean, we literally have every single Smash character from the past 20 years at our disposal here. But I think many of us can agree that despite all the extra content that's being crammed into this game, there's still one gaping void left to be filled to really drive home that this is the only Smash Bros. Game you need. The true ultimate experience. Break the targets. The Subspace Emissary, the absolute peak of the Smash Bros. Experience. Sure, we've got the World of Light to satisfy our somewhat need for a story plot, but at the same time, it's kind of a glorified carpet. Like, yeah, there is a story of the world being corrupted and Kirby saving the day, but there's so little genuine interactions and twists and turns on the narrative path that it's more gameplay than story, and even then, it, to most people, completely overstays its welcome. So in my head, the Subspace Emissary is what Smash Ultimate really needs if it wants to polish off that final title of the ultimate Smash Bros. Game. And what an amazing twist it would be if it had that as its final punch. I'm talking full-on cutscene production, fan fiction levels of interactivity and scenarios, and a plot that isn't a simple A to B mission that includes all sorts of our favorite roster members all joining forces for one big climax at the end. Throw in all sorts of references to each character through the environments or tools at their disposal, and you'll have created the second wave of one of the best imaginative fan servicey experiences of all of gaming history. But before I get ahead of myself, let us first pull right back to just the concept of why the Subspace Emissary 2 would be a great addition to Smash Ultimate before diving right into the boatload of content there is to unfold with this game mode. For a start, adding more game modes is a nice way to spice up the original gameplay of the core Smash formula, and it helps to incorporate more ways of enjoying the Smash Bros. Engine as it plays out. Plus, with a large arsenal of modes from the previous games, It can be simple enough to reconjure up again with some new tweaks and count it as another bout of nostalgic fan service. But beyond all of that, the idea of a Subspace Emissary 2, or whatever it would actually end up being called, is something that I feel could work especially well for the late game of Smash Ultimate, because it almost feels like it's already being set up to release. While admittedly the original Subspace Emissary had a good host of flaws that could use some ironing out, one of the more prominent ones for more perceptive fans was the fact that not every member of the Super Smash Bros. Brawl roster actually made it into the final story. Back then, if you were a super fan of Wolf, Toon Link, or Jigglypuff, then you'd be straight out of luck, as they were never mentioned or seen the entire time. And Sonic only popped up as a last-minute appearance due to his lateness in production, causing him to appear just for the final boss, seemingly out of nowhere. So what's the best way to tackle this roster problem? Slow down. Now that games can be updated and improved long after the initial release date, Sakurai and his team have the flexibility to hold off on such a large project in favor of finishing up every single character, ensuring that everyone can in fact be prevalent in the final story. And in fact, if this game mode came out immediately upon release, not only would it clash more noticeably with the World of Light mode, but it would also guarantee that all those high-demanding DLC characters we've been raving on about for the past 9 months would be cast out from the bigger picture. No, instead, waiting out for every single character to be complete, DLC and all, means that we can have the true ultimate experience, with every part of the new roster covered in a big overarching plot. And what a way to end on a boom for the final DLC update. And it doesn't stop there. With it being a year after the release of the core game and the World of Light premise, it's likely that most players would know the entire plot by that point. So how could the Subspace Emissary not tarnish the legacy that's already been built up in the World of Light? Well, how's about making it a sequel? I mean, yeah, this is all just speculation on my part, but it's clear that there's a little bit more to the story than just that core game mode, at least to me it is. In fact, it kind of feels like these DLC reveals are leading up to something, because the new character reveal cutscenes aren't always just showing the characters that are revealed. Well, actually, this only happened once, but remember the reveal for the hero? The cutscene shows off the hero and Link fighting against a world shrouded in darkness. Everyone in the near vicinity besides Link seems completely possessed. The sky is enshrouded in Darkon's darkness, and the trailer even begins with his menacing glare right at the start. Now sure, I guess this could be during the events of World of Light, during a more dire time, but to me, it almost seems like it's following on from one of the bad endings of the World of Light, when Darkon wins and engulfs the entire world in darkness. Perhaps as a final glimmer of hope, as almost every other character falls to their knees, the new challengers appear to rid the world of darkness once again, even when the odds are turned against them from this bad ending, making the story be about a potentially darker take of the premise following the fall of everybody else. It's an idea. Or maybe this was just simply themed on how he's the hero of light splitting the darkness and all that, but the marketing timing would still line up for the Subspace Emissary. So going with that, let's actually start picking at the Subspace and how it can actually be approached. For the few of you that don't know or haven't picked up by this point, the Subspace Emissary was an offline story mode that was playable only in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. In was scattered most of the Brawl roster into one big connected world, each with their own goals and personalities, until that world was cast into a giant evil plot that involved just about everybody. From it, we were gifted with partnerships we weren't expecting, mirrorings of characters' original games, similarities that managed to work together oddly enough, and in a few places, choice-based decision-making that actually tweaked the direction of the story. At least a little bit. And the whole thing was coated in pre-rendered and chunky cutscenes, as well as an all-new gameplay layout mode with a 2D platformer level design, with some fixed camera battlegrounds chucked in too. Together, it was a pretty investing, functional experience that really felt like it was a big, connected Smash world, albeit a very weird and imaginative way to piece everything together. And though the story does have a fair bit of depth if you look into the details of how certain characters interact or similarities banding them together, like the clashing of the Star Fox and the Kong's approach to problem solving, or the fact that Captain Falcon and Captain Olimar are both captains despite having completely different fields of skill and personality, going into the actual specifics of how the story goes down is a bit too much of a challenge for this video, considering there are multiple groups to follow and expand, with each shuffling and colliding several times by the end of the story. Really, there's just one big evil plot where no one is spared from the drama. Unless again, you're a Wolf, Toon Link, and Jigglypuff, or trying to appear from so far away a source that it takes you 99% of the game to appear on screen. So now let's take this giant ambitious concept from 2008 and push it over to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Obviously, I'm not just going to make an entirely new fan fiction of how the story is going to go with all 82-ish characters, but I will pitch in here and there. So as a start, it's pretty clear that this game mode would make sense once all characters are revealed. We know 3 of the 5 DLC newcomers, but there's still room for 2 more. I won't be speculating about who those last 2 are any more than I already have, and I've already made like 2 top 10 newcomer ideas lists, so check them out if you really want to knuckle down on who they could be. But presumably, all of them will be making an appearance in this game mode one way or another. Now with so many characters to juggle, it's clear that this is going to be a big undertaking. Brawl had only a roster of 37, only, and managed to handle all of this quite well by simply banding characters together or introducing them slowly over time. With 80-ish characters, it's possible some characters will just have to take more of a back seat, or at least not have much individual interaction and be more of a tag-along. I'm looking at you, Ken. Brawl's Subspace Emissary first tackled its characters by banding a handful together in different locations, oftentimes split by franchise. Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong, for example, had their own hometown in the middle of the forest, whilst Lucas and Ness had their own trials over in some distant park. Meanwhile, the protagonists of Smash, Kirby and Mario, were taking on each other face to face in a stadium arena with the 2 princesses watching over them. Not so much series-based, but themed with heroes and princesses instead. So with the Smash Ultimate roster, here's a handful of avenues that could band characters together through series or themes. Lining up quite nicely, the Donkey Kong Island/Jungle can be expanded further with the rare team of DK, Diddy Kong, King K. Rool, and Banjo and Kazooie. Perhaps from the start it could even begin with the classic rivalry of the Kongs and the Rules, if that makes any sense, before Banjo interrupts the gang and the adventure begins. Examples like that kinda write themselves. And while originally Snake was a bit of a lone wolf in his first appearance in Smash, someone with a similar spy/thief connection could also come from Joker, perhaps following him as an apprentice or even as some strange father-son connection to find deeper through the story. Sword fighters can be tackled directly by putting them all in one place, which Brawl also somewhat did already, at least a little bit. Or perhaps doing something similar on the flip side with magic users all being placed together. Perhaps the lazier characters or just the dogs are all chilling together with some food out in the sunny outdoors. And actually, something that Ultimate has already pushed further with that Brawl didn't dare was voiced dialogue. I could see it being a bit of a crux in a full-blown story, but if it works, then perhaps one band of characters could be a collection of talkative characters. Fox, Zelda, and Pit for starters, and perhaps Bayonetta, Snake, and Shulk, to name a few. Or maybe on a more individual level, certain characters have their own mini-missions to embark on before the real drama catches up with them. Back in Brawl, the Pokemon trainer was initially trying to capture all 3 Pokemon to build up his team, whilst Lucas meekly just joined him. Perhaps this could be introduced again with, say, Richter trying to find a lost Simon who's suspected to be taken from some evil monsters. Or perhaps it starts with Simon on the hunt to tackle the world's darkest threats, hunting down the likes of Ridley, Bayonetta, Dark Pit, and Dark Samus, like a bounty hunter. Maybe he even finds a couple of bounty hunters along the way. Imagine Olimar taking the spotlight trying to find his crashed ship, or trying to take down the biggest bosses of the lands, be it genuine monsters like Rathalos or another character like Incineroar or something. Or hey, if Chell is the next one to make it in, give us some Techno Land with some Techno characters all banded together. I'm talking Fox, Snake, Captain Falcon, Samus, Rob, Mega Man, Shulk, Bowser Jr., Cloud I guess, and Joker. Honestly, there's probably a million little connections that can be made with this roster that people can probably creatively come up with, but there's potentially more flexibility to play with on top of that. Because as much as my favourite part of speculating another Subspace is picking out these kind of connections, so also guys, do let me know your ideas too in the comments because I'd love to see what there is. There also seems to be more of a canonical background for the game to play around with, if it so chooses to. Because you see, Brawl gave us an entirely new, super connected map to see the story from, and it was functional and new and easily replaceable with another map with the same concept, but as many people have noticed, Smash has become just a little bit more canonical over the last couple of installments, as many of the locations shown off in the character reveal cutscenes of Smash for Wii U and 3DS have also made an appearance in Smash Ultimate. It may purely be speculation, but the spot where Kirby falls and crashes after Gleam's destructive attack looks an awful lot like the mountainous grounds of the Mega Man reveal, as well as the Koopalings one. which doesn't seem too far off from the Greninja grounds either. Add on to the fact that there's plenty of other locations to play around with, such as the boxing stadium where we saw Little Mac pitted against Ken and Incineroar, as well as a couple views of the Animal Crossing village and Dracula's haunting castle, and it seems there's plenty of room for some new avenues in locations, atmosphere, story, and random characters to chuck into them all. In fact, perhaps even the events of many character reveals can be reincorporated into the new Subspace Emissary story. Perhaps maybe all these character reveals have just been previews of this bigger story, with it acting out like a prequel of the event showing how everybody met and united. The original Subspace Emissary similarly revealed each character upon appearing, so it would fit pretty seamlessly here too, if you just put these kind of cutscenes into it. Here's some ideas for some of the more canonical Smash locations of the past that could be interacted with in a new subspacey format. Dracula's castle fits perfectly for the horrified adventures of Luigi and the determination of Simon and Richter, but perhaps someone of royalty may try and claim it in times of need. The Metroidian Corridor of Death is great for that techie idea, or maybe connecting it more with Portal, if that's real. The Animal Crossing Village is a great resort for the idea for lazier characters, or maybe just the youngest characters hanging about in some park in the outdoors. Mementos, though only really represented as a stage, could be an interesting avenue for Joker to jump out from, but perhaps other psychic users could also intercept him in the cognitive world. The open field is a generic location we've seen many times and works fittingly for the adventurous type, or perhaps creatures of nature like Bowser. The Rocky Mountains also fit well for adventurers or evildoers in the night, and could also work fantastically as a training ground for characters that like to train out in the open, such as Pokemon or the Street Fighter men. And again, although represented in an offhand anime format, the Skyworld is very much a prevalent location in Brawl, and perhaps could be the land of angels and blessed creatures like we see in the Palutena reveal, or perhaps demonic characters during the Dark Times, or simply enough, characters with a substantial ability to fly. Simple enough. I'm sure Olimar can go to heaven, right? And finally, that Fire Emblem Colosseum is the perfect mirror to the boxing ring for the more grotesque and raw fighting style of the more combative and somewhat medieval characters, like the Fire Emblem characters, Captain Falcon's intense power, or as we saw in his reveal, Robin's magical abilities, along with anyone else that wants to pitch in with the fantasy fight. All of those ideas, and that's just playing with the interactivity options of characters and locations. There's still plenty of room to try and cram in bosses and the likes like that. But what I really want to move on to now for just a brief moment is that big story piece. Obviously, again, I can't go into specifics since this isn't entirely fan fiction, but the premise of Brawl's story essentially had evil power spread across the lands, characters being possessed and turned into evil grunts, and the world being destroyed by several black holes, all creating a labyrinth of a strangely connected yet warped world. That's the very basics of it all, with characters on both sides of the story swapping throughout the adventure. And Smash Ultimate can very much play more with that concept. It already sounds pretty reminiscent of the World of Light in most regards, but this new Subspace story can easily intertwine with the World of Light if it ever wished to. It could be the prequel event showing how everyone met and connected, Galeem's first attack, and how everyone managed to get up to that cliff at the very start of World of Light. Similarly, it can be the sequel to one of the bad endings of the game mode, following the glimmer of hope from the Newcomers or elsewhere when the world was engulfed in darkness. Or if it really wanted to, it could just sever itself entirely from the World of Light and tackle its own separated story. As long as it has the general format of Brawl's approach with pre-rendered cutscenes, interactive characters, and a cacophony of a storyline, I imagine it would be received pretty well. But of course, there is room for better than pretty well, since the original Subspace Emissary does have some shortcomings. So let's talk about them for a moment. A lot of people have a lot of problems with the Subspace Emissary, and many of them have opportunities to be fixed with the right amount of time and attention to tweak them. One big one, for example, is the actual level design of the gameplay of Subspace. Many of the backgrounds and environments were found to be bland and unimaginative, sticking to basic tropes like jungle or wasteland, rather than filling up the world with the much more colourful and vibrant realities of the games being represented. Rather than the generic location bait, having the actual planet Zebes appear or a genuine adventure through a Pikmin-esque arena would be far more appreciated than the original and bland dribble that we got. Similarly, the enemies. The vast majority of the cast were entirely new, which, while nice, pales in comparison to the larger scope of enemy options from all of the video game series being represented. This already got handled pretty nicely in the 3DS's Smash Run game mode, with that same kind of gameplay, 2D platforming with a plethora of video game related enemy obstacles. Beautiful already. Chuck all of that in and the gameplay will appear far more vibrant and fan servicey. Continuing with level design further though, oftentimes they became repetitive and uninteresting, divulging a little too much into beat 'em ups with enemies that can be too big a frustration to actually take down. Smash Run kinda works on this too, as well as Melee's adventure mode in places by having certain enemies weak to other movesets, like Goombas and Koopas being weak to jumping on top of them. That's easy, simple fun. This could also be expanded more with the arsenal of certain moves of characters that can open up more of the gameplay. Imagine that there are certain enemies that are weak to fire, so any characters that have that fire ability can use that specific move to almost instantly take them out, or at least do double damage. Seems simple and easy enough, and it could expand the gameplay immensely. Adding alternative routes can also allow for more replayability options to make the game a better experience. Some also complained of the lack of puzzle challenges, which can probably be added or included more with the finding of the best move against certain enemies, maybe even in some cases needing to use the environment around them or something to add that little puzzle element. The final level is also a big point for concern, as it's one giant take on the entire world in its warped connected form. Split that up, make it less confusing, and tone down the playtime, and you've made a massive improvement in the right direction. So moving away from the level design and onto the actual story, for many, it's quite complex, and adding in a total of 80-ish characters will only fuel the fire more. Ways around this is by simplifying some of the concepts, like vehicles being stolen and hijacked and re-hijacked and all that malarkey, and working out why everyone's doing what they're doing. The Brawl version also missed out on just giving some exposition on what's going on from the start that really could have been useful. Or a simple one to fix is the lack of dialogue, which, while functional in Brawl, definitely limited the storytelling options in a lot of cases, as well as frustrated some players when very vocal characters were also muted. And finally, a decently sized complaint that I can kinda see the point of is the lack of a 100% bonus reward. Just throw something sizable into that and you're good to go. Goodness. Most of those solutions are fairly easy to work with and may require a good investment of time to finalize. But perhaps with the core game mostly settled down and a year-long project to focus on this side project alongside the latest and greatest DLC characters to introduce, Sakurai and his team have ample resources to give us one hell of a mic drop on the Super Smash Bros. Series, pulling together the giant connected world of Smash, banding together several misfit groups of characters, shuffling them across this vast story of evil trying to take over the world. Throw in a million references in locations, personalities, level designs, and puzzles, give us some deep and complex-ish story without going too far, perhaps with some voice acting this time around, showing our favourite characters in a new light as they tackle their latest and greatest adventure across all of Smash and across all of gaming as a whole, from the 1980s to the 2010s, from the darkest characters to the very lightest, from the reaches of Nintendo all the way out to Square Enix, or Valve if they play their cards right, with newcomers coming in every few months. And maybe if we're lucky, chuck in some new concepts as well, like some mini missions, some side quests, online functionality, and digestible customization. Wrap all that together and we could genuinely be in for one of the greatest video game experiences, single player or multiplayer, of this generation, if not, of all time. Oh, screw that, I just want Break the Targets. Thank you for watching. Here are my links if you want to see more of me, and check out twitch.tv/DazVideos very soon to join me on my marathoning JRPG quest this month. Hope you stick around.